with my kids and grandkids. And whenever I could do something, I do on Kihem Chayenu, actually drawn on my life history. You know, probably we're in the safer glaciers. And whatever happened to Abu Tabrum Ravini happened to me. Tabrum Ravini was saved from Kirchen Shalesh. I was saved from the Kirchen Shalesh. But 3 times. Tabrum Ravini, Torah said, Lechvachum Arzatum Aladechu. I also had abandoned my place where I was born and when I was raised. Even so, it was a poor little village. We had nothing, but I still have a sweet tooth for my few years I was there. Lord, Avram Avinu lo yakodesh moya Avram. My name was also changed. I came to America, my name was Aaron Pollock. Aaron Pollock is later in Auschwitz. Avram Avinu had 2 sons. I had 2 sons also. Only one difference between me and Avram Avinu, I have 2 Yitzchaks. So you know this is my history. So I guess you don't want me to tell you who won the game last night. Or how many points the stock market went down. I was born in a little village. But I think there was maybe 180 families. We had 2 shuls. One big shul was the Vishnitzer shul. One was the Siggeter. Today it's known as Satmar. And most of the time we did get along. Occasionally we had some flare-ups and we did what these canoeing do here in Israel in a Chillah Hashem. We had 2 chadorim in the village. One was public, where every child was entitled to it. One was private. The people who had more money paid for private learning. I went to a private Muhammad. My father's family was the richest family in town. That means nothing. We didn't have electricity because there was no electricity in town. We didn't have water, there was no water in town. We didn't have any plumbing, there was no plumbing in town. But we had lots of cows. We had lots of apple orchards, lots of forests. So even if you had money, you couldn't use it. You could only buy another animal, another piece of thing. Otherwise, I had to walk to Cheder in the same mud as anybody else. And it was a really tough climate. I remember my father used to wake me. I had an older brother who didn't make it. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the kitchen, we had buckets of water. The bucket of water was frozen because we didn't have weather stripping to the winter, so the wind came right in. There was a sign, welcome sign outside, and it came right in. Then we had to put in leather boots. My father gave us a hot glass of milk, real milk, and lit the kerosene lamp, and then we marched to school in the dark, to Cheder bus school. About 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, we stopped and we all had to go to Davening shul. Well, most of us weren't interested that much to daven because we had rivers. In the wintertime we were frozen and we went skating in there. But if you missed the Muhammad, we didn't call everybody out there. He was a Muhammad. He took good care of us. So most of the time we didn't attend the Cheder. After that, we went home and we ate breakfast. Again, a glass of milk with a piece of bread and butter. But the bread was baked only once a week. My mother used to bake. That was Thursday night. From there we went to public school. Every Jew, every kid had to go to public school. Then we could not bear it. We didn't have yarmulkes for us. We only wear these caps. Then on the main wall was a big sailor, a black one, and he was on there. And if you want to know why I'm more headed today, that sailor caused it. 1 o'clock we came out from public school, we went back to Cheder. And we were there at Cheder until time to daven in Chamara. Then we had to go to shul to daven in Chamara. We came back and we had to stay in that, what we used to call a jail, until 9 o'clock. So we didn't have too much leisure time. Poor people, we had plenty. Every part, family, went to big Thursday. Bread and challah for themselves. We used to bake one extra challah, and then we used to pick it up and go put it in the house who didn't have it. And if there was poor people in shul, the shamas used to come and you're taking 2, you're taking 3, and so on. Then I was born under the Czechs. The country was then dominated by Czechoslovakia. Then the Hungarian came in. And the best Hungarian is the one who was in a cemetery. They're mean, tough, hard-headed people. And as they came in, the first thing they ripped kids' face. We all wear puttees. But the only thing we didn't wear that sits us outside, that I could say, we didn't wear a yarmulke because the Schutzim shouldn't start trouble with us. When the Hungarians came in, they started to put already different degrees of discrimination against the Jew. Then they imposed no Jew could own a business, because the Jews did control the business in town. So we had store, and also had what some communities today would call it a tavern, and plain simple as a bar. And most of the Goyim lived in the hills, in the mountains. Once a week they used to come down Sunday, go to church. After the church, they used to go down on the street, and they used to drink. And sometimes they used to get drunk, and my father used to grab them and throw them out. They were afraid for my father. Then we had 3 brothers, and they were very well respected. They were also with such a sinner. I remember my father was in charge of rebuilding the mikveh, and there wasn't a mikveh when you make the shumah, what you have here, Ma'im Chai mikveh. And then the Hungarians started to draft Jewish men into the service. But they didn't put them into the regular army because they were Jewish. So they had to wear civilian clothes, and they put a yellow band around it. So my father was also drafted. But the last time when he was called in to the draft, he walked into the railroad. The railroad was about 2 miles from our house. He cried. He never came back. Never even came to Kimberly School. And he threw out from the window from the train, from the cattle car train, 2 letters. One addressed to me, Schleimer, and one addressed to my older brother, who was a year and a half older than I, Moshe Meshel. And he said, nobody could help me, but you, if you're down and fast every Monday and Thursday, that's the only yeshiva could have. Yes, and we did fast, but he didn't come back. But we didn't even know when he died. We only said shiva for an hour, but the halacha is, if it's a certain time expired, you don't have to sit complete shiva. And then they started to look for people to get rid of Jews. So they came up with a new hechatitza. You must have Hungarian citizenship. The Hungarian citizenship, if you're born in here, you get a citizenship. So many of the Jews who migrated from Poland or from other areas, they gathered them and took them with a horse and wagon. And they took them to the Polish border, was maybe about 25 miles, and they dumped them there. That Poland already at that time was dominated by the Germans. They slaughtered these innocent people like shit. But we thought we'll get away with it. But the Mashemanik Eichmann came in 1943 and forced the Hungarian government to give them the Jews. The government wasn't pro-Jewish, but they didn't want to do it. So, in the meantime, there was no radio. A Jew couldn't have a radio if he wanted. There was no newspaper. The only thing you had messages that were sent from the Judenrat. The Judenrat means the Jewish organization from Budapest. That the Jews should be ready. They will take us to areas in Hungary where they drafted all the young people into the army and we will go to work. Then the time came, the policeman came to everybody's door, he got a report. And then at that point, in the village, and you got to bring something worthwhile. So, if you had something, you brought what's the name? I can't, candle, lighter from silver. But the poor ones didn't have that. Okay. From there, our own horse and wagon took us to the ghetto to another town. And all these towns were pressed in there, like sardines. And after that, the only one was left in the village was the roof, who his wife gave birth to a baby, and they waited for 8 days before they brought him to the ghetto. And he survived, and he lived in Baratar. He's dead now. And we were in the ghetto, and we couldn't walk on the major street. It's the quarters that give you a whipping in the Hungarians. It's very mean when it comes to law and order. See, if you have Hungarian police here, nobody would throw stones. All of a sudden, the decree came, we must report again at a certain place. And from there, by the train stations, they loaded us out in cattle cars. Box cars with a little window. And everybody took what they could. Some food, some that. My grandmother was must have been about in the 90s. No water, no nothing. And that cattle car took us through Hungary into the Slovakian border. At the Slovakian border, the Germans took over the train. We didn't know where we were going. Then we went through Slovakia. Slovakia is famous for the Tatra Mountains, tunnels, and from there we wound out in Poland. And I remember to this day, Auschwitz is an industrial city. And at that time, the trains were running on the Hondas to the front, supplying the German troops. So we were stopped at that place for about 12 hours. No water, little kids. One of my aunts spoke a very beautiful German. So she spoke to the window, and some of the officers were riding on open flat cars where they had the cannons on it. So he said, don't worry, you're pretty soon get water. You're almost at your destiny. Then the train finally pulled out, and he came to a gate, an arch from bricks, and on that arch was written, Arbeit macht das Leben frei. Work makes you free. As soon as we pulled up, the train stopped. You had all kind of noise. You had music, you had dogs, and you had the SS screaming. They screamed screamed so loud, and they had Jewish people who called Canadians. Why? Canadian, because they had a passport that they're Canadian citizens. They opened the ranks, the train, and they told everybody to leave there. Just go out yourself. And the noise was so loud that you couldn't even think. Where this, and you had to line up. 2 lines. Adults on the right, women and children, old one in the left. We didn't know what it means. I was not the most gentle kid, so I got lost from my mother. And once you get lost, and I wound up on the right side, you couldn't disturb a German or the line goes through. So I wound up between the adults who were saved for labor. My older brother went with my mother, went to the gas chamber, and so on. From there we went to a big room. They called it enclosing. You took all your clothes off. If you had hair, they shaved you off bareheaded, and they sprayed you with some kind of chemicals. And you took a shower, and they give you the white clothes with a little head. From there they took us to C lager. There was different A, B, C, D, and so the many different lagers. Camps. I was a little boy, just about 13. I never was away from my village without parents. I cried for 3 days. I want to go to my mother. But finally, some old timer who was there already a year, like working in the barracks, that maintained the barracks, pointed out to me, see your mother on the chimney. The crematorium was burning. The flame was maybe 40, 50 high above the chimney. But everything comes to an end. You could cry, go on crying, then you must wake up. That's reality. You've got to cry to see what the next move is. But with each transport, adults, so many kids got in there. And when it came to the industrialists, came demanding workforce people, they didn't want no part of us. We finally accumulated approximately 26,000 children. 112, 113, 116, 117. Mengele Yamach Shemoy, he was, when you saw him, he was very gentle, very polite. Came out, he got to clean the place out. So the letter rumor, all the big children will go to a potato farm. And he felt very good, we can have what to eat. So they set up the end of the camp, a wood frame for height. You have to take your shirt off to see how much flesh you get. And then you had the left and right, the same story all over again. I happened to be big boned, and my bones showed up instantly, so I also got put in the left side. But they didn't use rigid enforcement, because if you start, especially kids, you start to be too rigid, kids are going to jump in there. So I decided I don't want to go to talk about this natural instinct. So I snuck myself through to the other side. That was Erev Rosh Hashanah. The second selection was Erev Yom Kippur. That was a mean one. We came back, I went through the same story. I went back, didn't accept my destiny. What they decided for me, I decided my own destiny. So we came back to the camp, to Fort Barron. It was dark. We gave up that piece of bread. And once in Kippur, we were fasted at the dark. The Bachias. But came down from these boys that I always should have done with Shia. But nothing happened. For that reason, she come across a man who survived that hardened, even if he's not believed in anything, find a scripture. It's very, very hard. The amount, when you see those things, only reason why I am still religious is because I had a mentor like a Muhammad Weissman Glover show, and anybody who learned under his hashkafa never could go out to doctor's. Next morning, they used to let us out during the day from the barracks. That's so that he would kick her. Knew when it was kicker and knew when it was shrews. The older people did congregate. It was also cold there, and they down whatever they knew by heart. We didn't know nothing. But the children were picked to go into the weaklings. Their barracks were sealed up. And the Broad Health District, that means the Jew who was in charge of that barrack, he was called the older, was responsible for these kids. They gave him 50 children, he must deliver 50 children, so he didn't let none of them out. But we could talk to him through the cracks of the wood. And my group from my town was two brothers, Mendel Adler and Alter Adler. Mendel was a big, husky kid, must have been about 17, 18 years old. Alter was my age, but a little young, smaller. So Alter was in the barracks to go for Yansville. And we came out and he was crying at her. Mendel gave my for bread. Mendel, they got to burn me to death. Mendel couldn't take it. Went over to the guy from the block house that's there and exchanged himself. Alter survived. Now, all the kids knew that they were going to be burned to death. Because the Germans, Yerach Shemai, had a system. Everything works on a law and order. If you had a group of 500 people, they put them in a gas chamber. If you only had 50 people, you just dumped them in an open fire pit. So, at night, 2 days later, they came and they knocked the electricity off. And they put all these children on a dump truck and they were gone. At that time, they just started to bring in the last ghetto in Poland, Lodz. Lodz was a big ghetto, had a lot of people. Now, most of them were not saved, not even 1%. They were all Muslim, that means skin and bone. And we just used to see the train because, it was open, it was only fire. So they needed workers. They didn't have any more adults. They grabbed 57 children, including myself. They took us to the front and tattooed us, loaded us up on a wagon with a SS soldier on the truck, and they drove us for about 2 hours and we wound up in Gleiwitz. Gleiwitz is an area in Schleswig, so is Auschwitz, where they have a lot of coal. And then they took us to work in the, normally when the weather was good, we were digging foundations. See, they didn't have enough equipment, cranes to dig out. So you could do the same thing with manual labor force. The only thing, if you build a building, taller the building goes, heavier it is, keep it the footing. You gotta go a wire, you gotta go cut it, gonna swell. So they didn't have the machinery anymore. So we started out. One kid was in the bottom, shoveling up 5 foot, like a step. From there until it came up. When it got real cold, frozen, we had to unload train loads of cement, and I couldn't carry a bag of cement, so I crawled with it. Or we had to keep the new buildings were made from concrete or cement heated. It takes 60 days for concrete to cure. If during this 60 days you have a deep frost, the building will crack and you can throw it out. Then one day they gathered us together. It was snow coming down, big chunks of snow. And we were walking because the Russians were getting close. We were walking at night. They put us up in a hay barn, packed lots of bees. In the mornings they went with it by an egg, poking it to make sure nobody, because they couldn't count you. Otherwise you can't, every night they had a pair, and count from each barrel. Next morning we walked. Until we got to a point, I don't know exactly what the name is, they had 10 railroad tracks. The main center, I think it was Breslau, that was a big center. You know, this is up approximately at least half a car, you know, for freight, about 200 people in it. You couldn't do nothing but stand. And on each cars, you get a chair, and the stopper was riding with a machine gun. So, because an open car is easy to jump out. And we were riding, no food. The only food we had is from heaven, mud. But it was not mud, it was snow. And you know, you could only stand on your feet so much. After that, you collapse. If you collapse, you never got up. You trampled. Stepped on you, you couldn't get up. Well, we kids had a system even then. One went to sleep, and when we had to get out, we started to move him and bring him up. And this is how it survived. We traveled around with him, that dragon, for about 3 weeks. Because Germany lost ground, and all the camps were full of people. And they couldn't find an empty place for it. But we went through Czechoslovakia, not Czechoslovakia, Czech. The people threw in bread. Top, the SS shouted, but that bread killed half of the leg. You know? So when that person was dead, or we used him for a pillow to sleep, or we threw him overboard. When we got to Oranienburg, we had enough room to take a walk in the car. And we didn't have a heavy underwear either. So sometimes I wonder myself how I made it. Then we were in Oranienburg for a while. All of a sudden we heard already the artillery shooting. That was about 20 miles from, no miles, kilometers from Berlin. The dogs moved us again. Then they moved us to a camp, and I think this was one of the worst camps after Birkenau, Flossenburg. It was a mixed camp. They had a lot of German criminals, Zaidy, thieves, whatever you want. And they were very, very mean. They used to just enjoy to see somebody bleeding. And I have 2 wounds on the back of my head because he used to catch me and beat me. And the only one who did save me was some Russian war prisoners. They were also adults. And finally, in that camp, even then I was a fighter. Anyone who went out to work slice of bread with a little margarine at 10 o'clock. And we picked stones. I also used to go out. Finally, the Americans got so close, everything stopped. So it was 3 weeks. They didn't give us no food at all. I was very little, so I squeezed myself in through a fence into the area where they had the dump skips from the kitchen from the SS. And I found all these bones, and I ate them up. I had good teeth then. And I lived from these bones. Finally, they saw the Americans are coming close. They still didn't give up to take care of the little Jews. They gathered all the Jews together as they marched us down through the town to the radar. The radar was in April. So they put us in cars, and in the middle you had 2 guards, 2 SS guards. We didn't have food for a long time. These Yamashimoiks sat down in the center and started eating breakfast. That German smelly cheese and so on. You could only look at it. But the British let him have his way. All of a sudden, some American fighter planes came, boom, 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 and blew that locomotive apart, and SS jumped to disappear. They went, we went too. But they didn't come back right away. In the meantime, I was out of the wagon. I crawled back, and I helped myself, but I was precious to their breakfast. I took some cheese. I took a loaf of bread, and I took some liverwurst, and went out and started to eat it. That was one of the best meals I had. Then another guy came over to give me some. I'll tell you the truth. We were not human. We were high. I didn't want to give him. I said, go there. So he told me openly. He's going to report me. I can't have him. But then, calm down, he reported me. But I was naive. I took my coat, turned the inside out, and went to another car. So when they came, I didn't look the same. The man only saw me one time. They him though, so I made it. And we couldn't carry us anymore by wagon. We had to march. And it was coming and raining in April. And as you started to swivel, you couldn't walk. You took the rifle and hit you in the head and shot you in the head, and don't be in here, because that on the country, had these little water runs. I think we started out 5,000 men. I don't think more than 500 survived. Finally, one night they put us in a hay barn to sleep, and we were compact like sardines. So I was laying on somebody was laying on me. So I was laying on the dog, and he didn't like it, so he pinched me. The only tool I had to cry. I woke up that you stop on it, and he beat the head out of me. My head blew out like a balloon. So I knew I'm finished, because I can't walk anymore. And next morning we started to walk, and I was shaking. All of a sudden, he throws himself down on the ground, and I hear some shooting. And he disappeared, not like a lightning. And I was in no place, an open field, and some houses were burning. Right away went over to look for bread. Asked the German woman tried to save him. Say, help me and I'll give you bread. So I took one piece out and she showed me where the bread, and I took care of the rest of it. Tied my pants out there, and that's what we collected bread. Then you're talking from a kid. I didn't know where to go because I was like an animal. Wherever the owners shipped me, they were with. I didn't know where to go. Finally, a guy who was older took me with him. The mountain MPs took us to Schwandorf city, lot of Russian war prisoners, and they shipped us over to Leipzig, the Russian zone. That was the end of the worries. Now you can't do what you want. The Russians loaded us up on trains, and the train started to go towards Czech, from there to Yugoslavia, from there to Hungary, from there to Romania, into Russia. But it took very long, because the passenger trains must all the time stay on the side until the military trains got. And again, the Russians didn't give us food. So when each one we stopped, and we knew we'll be there for 3 days, I used to go down and canvas some bread from the peasants, and some used to give you things. When we got to Bratislava, the capital from Slovakia, on the station, there was lined up hundreds of Russian soldiers. So as I walked by, I heard some of them say, "Amchu, Amchu." I turned around. You're Jewish, yeah, they took care of me and gave me food. From there I went to Budapest. In Budapest, the Jewish was already existing. They had an open kitchen, gave you to eat. The Czech council gave you some money, and it was already in May, nice and warm, and there were plenty of benches and park. And I was there for a while. And all the time got to eat. All of a sudden, a hush came up on me. I want to go home. Maybe somebody's living there. I took the train, and I knew how to take the train, because Budapest has 2 train stations. I took the train, and that took me to my hometown, and I had nothing, so they didn't bother me. But if you didn't have any documents, the Russians picked you up, but they didn't bother children, except if you had some money or anything that took it away from you. I got to a point where I had to take another train to take me to my village. My village I got, there was no Jews in there. The Romanian boy recognized me, they gave me something to eat. I went to a couple of the apple orchards where we had boy living and they worked for us. Then they told me there is one Jew alive, but he's in the next town. This Jew was about grown. And he said, he took his wife and kids and hid himself in a bunker, and he made it. I went in, I lived with him, he said, and then my uncle came home, was alive, and I became his assistant, that means his shamash. I used to be the cook. And he was very religious, even then, very religious. Every day he cried about so bitter. He wouldn't eat any favors. I didn't give a damn what it was. So uncle was food. But he wanted to have some chicken. So I had to go there. I heard next village. There's a shortage coming there. That Shlomo came there 10 minutes after the shortage had left. So that means I got to go to the city over there. You know, it's no car. You walk. I didn't feel like walking. So I wanted to twist that chicken's head off. Straight to shortage did it. But they caught me. So I didn't. I had to go to Siget. And Siget already belonged to Romania. So I crossed the bridge on the Tisa River. And the Russians were laughing. There, kid goes with a chicken. All right, I finally found the sheriff. Then the Russians took that area over. They annexed this part of Czechoslovakia. But the Russians didn't trust the Hungarians. This was the only way they could have a border with the Hungarians. And we had to smuggle ourselves across to Romania to the river. And again, the adults were caught by the Romanian border police. They took everything away. I had nothing. So they sometimes they faced the people. I had nothing. They took nothing away. From there, I was hanging out in that city. Normally the train started out in Siget, crossed the river into the Czech side, and went there for about 3 hours, and then it flew back to Romania to Satmar. But for the Russians, you couldn't do that. So the only thing you could go by wagon to the mountains. Well, I arrived with some Russian soldiers in the back, but they were all drunk. And I got there. As soon as I got there, Satmar, I found a place, went to sleep, and I got some food. And after a while, I smuggled myself back into Hungary. The only thing I had with me, salt, natural salt. And the trains were free, but no windows. So after a point, the train stopped and we couldn't go, we had to walk. When we were walking on the snow was crispy when you broke on it. And I used to go to the farmers and I'd mug up salt. You want any salt? Because Hungary doesn't have any salt. I used to give them salt, they used to give me bread. And I came to a point where they had a little train, a smaller train, not a conventional thing. That train took me to Ehel. Ehel, if you want to know, is the place where the Satmar dynasty title started. Yismach Moshe was rabbi there, and the dynasty of the title started. Ehel was split. One side was Hungarian, one side Czech. And it was very, very cold. We slept in houses without any heat. And clothes, I had nothing, just pants and a jacket. So what you did, you took the coat off and covered it up there, and your feet froze, and you put it there, this way you're busy the whole night. So finally I got smuggled through the Czech border. Who do you think they caught? Schleimer got caught. Now, I couldn't do nothing. I tried. They didn't do nothing to me. Said, kid, get lost. I jumped the next train, and I wound up in Kasha. Kasha was already a big city. From there, I don't know how I made it. I took the next train, and I got off in a smaller city where I had an uncle. And I got there, and I stayed with him for a while. Then I really, yeshiva got reorganized. See, the Slovak Jews. Night yeshiva went on until 6 minutes before the end of the war. And when it came towards the end, most of them ran into the woods and got safe. So, Keesmark, I don't know if you would don't know where Keesmark is anyhow. So I went to Nitro, and I went to that yeshiva, and the joint took care of us. They gave us whatever they could give. We had a place to sleep, there was no heat, and had bread and black coffee and so on. But we were totally not normal. We were animals. Couldn't control us. We were wild. The only thing they demanded of us, you must stop. Then you could kill yourself. And we did. After 6 months, the Mashgiach Union force started and pulled the string tighter, and we had to get in line. And we learned that time of the Bruches, and I still remember somewhat I learned. Then the anti-Semitism got so bad that they came at night, the Slovaks were Rishon. They wanted to kill us. So the joint realized that they got to take us out of there. I don't know if you kids know who the joint is. The joint is the Federation of Charities all over America. Got together, that means joint, and they all put in money to it for one thing to help you. Instead, each federation to go. That's what it's called joint. But we couldn't pass the physical to go to America. We were skin and bone. Well, they sent us on vacation. It was not on a 5-star with that. There was corral in Hungary. They are people who were royalty. They owned a lot of land. They had these big palaces and the big stables. We got to live in that stable. It was painted white, beautiful. And you know, we didn't have spring mattresses, not even when I was home. But straw. And from there, some Jewish family had a farm, some 80 had a cows, a milk farm. They gave us milk, but we had to go and pick the milk up with a horse and wagon. And there was one boy, he was the Balgola Ezra, Berkovich. Meantime, in Europe, the boy had a crucifixion almost on every exchange road. They stopped and they gave a bomb and then they go. We were kids. In bitter, what happened to us. So Hester Deitch, he's alive, came across a crucifixion in the area from porcelain. He took it and broke it. The village found out his guns and were ready to come in and kill us all. The priest from that town came and told us, do not sleep in your room, and he'll try to calm them down. In the meantime, Ezra Berkovich took me as I waited to pick up milk. Coming back, we had these white cans, you know, the aluminum cans. All the boys came out from the church on Sundays. They were still hot from that crucifixion where they stopped to feed the heck out of Ezra. I was so little I got snubbed in and disappeared to over the milk. So that, after that, they took us to Prague to get passports. To get my birth, to get from me on my name a passport, they had to get birth certificate. My area where I was born was already under Stalin's regime. That would have taken months. So a Jew has all the time a solution. So they went into Nitra City Hall and took out birth certificates from kids who didn't make it back. And this is how I got the name Alan Todd. And I have a twin brother. The only thing is he was red-headed and I was blonde. And we had a 14-year-old kid who was named even as a brother. So we went to Prague, we got passports, and I didn't even know how to sign my name. Just about know that not today. So we had passports, so they shipped us out, and on the way, these Slovaks tried to attack us. So we arrived in France. We didn't have any visas to go any place. So there was the Reifman family, the famous Reifman family, at that time lived in Tangier. And they wanted to take us into Tangier. In the meantime, a Jew all the time gives himself an answer. Somebody came up with a hechatimsa. Since in Europe all the yeshivas and the Rabbanim was slaughtered out, they have to get new students to go for the rabbinate. Under that Chochmah, we would get student visas. So we applied for student visas. The only problem is you must have a school to sponsor it. If you don't have a school, so Torah Madas, Rabbi Frankovich, all the Shalom, signed it. We all got visas to go for 2 years or 3 years to America to study. We came in to America. We brought a kilo to France, the second largest ship. Then was a military ship during the war. The visas were expired, so the Czechoslovakian Council was given new visas on the boat. So the border control took out me and my brother, Shlomo Pollack, twins. He said, get out of here. He stopped us. And we wound up in Ellis Island. I was there for 3 weeks. And then you get a hearing, you come in front of a judge. I didn't know what he's saying. The only thing is I know they gave me 7 up and they said, very good. He came in front of the judge says, idiot, what am I going to do with these kids? We never get sent and nobody wants to close your eye. So we let us go. From there we applied for a new visa for 2 more years. And then there was a special bill passed in Congress. Normally to become a citizen in America, you must go out and come in legal under immigration. There was a special bill and we were all made given us green cards. So I was a Nitra, yeshiva. I learned there until 1950, and I was one of the very close people to the Chomer Weissman law showing. I think he was, if he wouldn't have had to deal with such a sinner all his life like he did, he would have been the greatest Jew in his generation. Because the man was a computer. You know the Bible quote? He invented it. He discovered it. And when he used to speak, even the stone used to melt. He died very young. Now, since you're a bunch of nice ladies, I'll give you a bracha. The Gemara says, of the hate birches, hekit kalbanefel. I think I'm qualified to be a hekit. Hashem Yisborach should bless you. You should have a tzlucha all your life. And you should go out and make yourself a career to do something for Klal Yisrael. And remember, whatever you choose to do for tomorrow, that you should do also to benefit other Jewish people. Amen.